inscriptions were cast. So let me go back there for the sec. I think we have a little bit of time. Let's start just focus on this slide because it shows you where the spaces are. So why the spaces are in sort of in the four corners, and there's a reason. Because when the original mold was made, it would not have inscription already carved in the clay. The inscription, again, what I'm telling you is sort of the mainstream view, not necessarily the conclusive view. The mainstream view is that you will carve the inscriptions on another piece of block, okay? And then you make an impression, and you embed that impression in a recessed area in the clay mold for the bronze vessel. So in other words, you make the inscription mold piece separately, and you embed it into there, and then you secure it with some of the spaces. So this is the most simplistic way of thinking about it. So that's why it's partly explained why the spaces where they are. So let's resume. So we've been talking about at the beginning, how Avery Brundage acquired it and when in 1952 and the price of it, so on and so forth. So fortunately, with this bronze vessel, we actually have fairly good provenance for when it was actually excavated and where. And as we know, it's in Shandong area. And I also mentioned, let me pick from where we left off before the break. So I said the first dated publication of the rhino appeared in the journal titled Jizhou Jingshi Annals of Metal and Stone of Jizhou, as you see here, published in 1845. 1845, 5 years after the Opium War. It's not related, but it's a reference. So the record in this particular document says, let me read out to you. Zhong Yangtian, which is a man, of Jining, which is a place, as a county, recently obtained 7 ancient objects at the foot of Liangshan, which is a hill. Souzhang, which is where the hill is located in another county. 3 Ding, Wenyi, Wenhe, Wenzun, and Wenyan. These are all the different vessel types. Among them, Lugong Ding. Lugong means the Duke of Lu. Lu is the state where Confucius lived later on. And the animal-shaped zun have already been acquired by the Kong family of Qufu. The Kong family is the descendants of the Confucius. The animal-shaped zun is the shape of a bovine with 4 columns of a seal script inscription of 28 characters, all on the inside of the belly. Single horn and prominent nose. The vessel was originally at Rencheng, is a township, another location, and has now been entered into the collection of the family of the Most Holy Duke. That's his title conferred on the lineal descendants of Confucius. So to give us a very, very good the provenance. The word niu in the Chinese has very general, fuzzy words, if you will. The word niu or bovid in Chinese can be generally applied to many ungulates, including rhinoceros, but it does not specify it's rhinoceros. There are 2 curious discrepancies between the inscriptions quoted here and also our rhino that we know for sure. We know the rhino has an inscription of 27 characters. Here it says 28. Our rhino has 2 horns. Here it says single horn. So how can we be sure the animal shaped this vessel in this inscription or in this record refers to ours? Fortunately, the annal not only published the words but also a transcription of the actual inscriptions, as we see on your right. It matches that on the Brundage vessel, leaving no doubt that the animal-shaped zun indeed refers to the rhinoceros. And I think because ancient Chinese characters sometimes 2 are closely composed together, it's hard to distinguish, particularly in the early days of epigraphical study. Sometimes these kind of mistakes are easily made. But also, you may notice the published the record in 1845 only transcribed the inscriptions, not the image of the vessel. So a lot of times it is a hearsay. That's what the image looked like. There's very little photographic or line drawings in those early records of epigraphy in China. So, Souzhang, as we know, where the Liangshan Hill is located, is situated in the plain in the western part of Shandong. And here you see the map showing where the Shandong is located in China, and this is detailed topographic map of Shandong. In Song times, it was an important region east of the Song capital Anyang. Liangshan, Mount Liang, is a hill in the Souzhang area where quite a few bronzes of the last Song and the late Song and the early Western Zhou periods have been found over the years. The most famous being the 7 bronzes, including our rhino. So here is the Liangshan, where the Mount Liang is located, where those 7 vessels were found, including our rhino. And here is the last capital of the Song dynasty. And you can tell the green indicates lowland, the plain. So the traffic was fairly easy. So it's a very important part of the eastern direction of the Song domain, which is most towards the end of the Song dynasty is concentrated in this region. Okay. Some scholars have speculated that Liangshan was where Xiaocheng Yu, or lesser minister Yu, was established as the local power. This is an open speculation. We don't know for sure. Xiaocheng, we know, can be translated as lesser minister. Yu is the name. We're not sure Yu is the individual person's name or the name indicating the clan from which he comes from. For example, you can call me Xu, or you call me Jay. Jay is my personal name. Xu is my family name. There are many Xus in my families, but there's only one Jay. So Yu is like that. We're not entirely sure it is personal name or it is name of the clan from which he came from. As the annals of a metal and a stone of Jizhou mention, rhino was collected by the preeminent family of descendants of the Confucius, who lived at Qufu, where Confucius temple was located, and that is there. So this give us a sense of a location where things are. This provenance surely adds to the prestige of the bronze rhino that we have. By the way, Mount Liang would later be associated with the historical bandit Song Jiang and his companions of the northern Song dynasty in the earlier 12th centuries, fictionalized in the well-known novel, Chinese name is Sui Hu Zhuan, which has been variably translated as water margin or outlaws of marsh, or all men are brothers, or the marshes of Mount Liang, or in my translation, the Robin Hood of China, if you will. So this is a translation, the volume. And even it got into the popular culture. In the cartoons you saw on the left, and it was also a set of figures from the outlaws of the marsh are very popular in other Eastern Asian countries such as Japan and Korea. On the right, you see a ukiyo-e print depicting one of the 108 heroes or bandits of that period. Another prominent association. Since 1845, the vessel really became a celebrated piece in China for its long inscriptions. Among the Song bronze inscriptions, those datable to the late Song period amounts to about 1,249 pieces. Of course, the number is growing. But so in the last 200 years of the Song dynasty and the last 200 years of 2nd millennium BCE, among all the bronze inscriptions datable to their period, there are about a little over 1,000 pieces. However, the vast majority of them, 80% more or less, consist only of 1, 2, or 3 characters, such as the inscription on a famous vessel in our own museum's collection, the famous Ya Yi Jia, which has 2 characters, as you see here. See, this is a classic example. Sometimes you can confuse whether it's 1 character or 2. Looks like one, but actually this is a sort of clan sign on top, and this is another character. They're interconnected. This is sometimes hard to count. And the reason I'm saying it's famous because from the royal mausoleums in Anyang, which is restricted to the royalty of the Song dynasty, the king's tomb were buried there. It's very likely, actually, our Yayi Jia came from one of the very large tombs belonging to one of the Song kings. So there are about only 50 or so bronze inscriptions consisting of 10 or more characters, accounting for only about 4% of the total number of inscriptions known. Our rhino has 27 characters, so it's very long. And the longest, I believe, in existence is about 48 characters. So ours is fairly long. In this regard, our rhino is extraordinarily precious for its inscription. Almost all the major scholars in China studied it, and some 13 catalogs from 1845 to 1945 published the inscription. Here we are seeing just 2 examples. Interestingly, however, the unique stylistic feature of the rhinoceros was not mentioned even once in Chinese scholarly commentaries. In words, they may describe it as animal-shaped vessel, animal-shaped zhuan. Zhuan is a type of wine vessel. But there was zero interest in depicting what it looked like through photographic means or through line drawings, because in the early 20th century, late 19th, photographic means were available. So this actually attests a very important cultural behavior, attesting to the overwhelming emphasis on epigraphy among traditional Chinese studies of ancient bronzes, not so much the vessel itself. The vessel is as a carrier of words that have been perceived as historical documents, or the words of the sage, so on and so forth, that has carried tremendous value. So writing, as once again that we can understand, reigns supreme in Chinese civilizations. Writing is everything. That also explains partly, just allow me to digress a little bit. If you look at ancient China, there are numerous famous or notorious emperors. You never know what they look like. Chinese monarchies never express their authority through lifelikeness. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs did the opposite thing. It's entirely opposite. You go to everywhere, you see their images. Right? This is how they express their rulership and supremacy. What is the tools in China that emperors express its imperial authority? It's the words. He established steles everywhere to erect steles to document Confucius doctrines, for example, patronized or sponsored by him. So the knowledge, the words, is the ultimate expression of authority. And it's just starting from very, very early on, from the ancient Bronze Age. And ironically, however, when Brundage purchased these vessels in 1952, it was surely not the inscription that attracted him. The contrast between the Chinese emphasis on epigraphy and the Western emphasis on visual appearance has become a constant theme in comparing collecting practices between China and the West. Besides the bronze rhino, the other 6 vessels from Liangshan were also dispersed. What they may have looked like. Here is a collage of the other 6 vessels, but I only show you 5, because one of the 6 never published. We don't even know what they look like at all. However, the other 5 that we're relatively assured, and they are in existence of both Chinese and overseas collections. For example, this one is in Freer Secular Gallery, and that one is in the Sumitomo collection in Japan, in Kyoto, Japan, and that is in the Tianjin Municipal Museum of Fine Arts, which is a metropolis not far away from Beijing. So far, 5 of them can be confidently identified in collections in China, Japan, and the US, as we see here. The 6th has never been published. But also beyond that, there was another debate based on the very early 1845 document, the Annals of Stone and the Metals of Jizhou. These Chinese descriptions are really general. They are not specific. So over the course of years, as I mentioned, they were published, our writer published 13 times. And there's scholarly debate. What were the original 7? And that is a very, very fascinating and difficult story. I'm in the middle of actually studying it, but I don't have a lot of answers for you. But one point I want to make, even with the 5 that we can be relatively assured what they look like, they are very different from our rhinos. Our rhino, once again, is exceptional, and they also date from different periods. For example, this dates from a little bit later. It's after the conquest of the Song Dynasty by the Western Zhou. And this is maybe even a slightly later as well, and this is more or less around the same time. So actually we can tell the majority of the 7-piece set dates later than our rhinoceros. And their inscriptions tells us very precisely, for example, this inscriptions mention a title Taibao, Grand Protectorium. This, or Great Grand Protector. This is a very prominent title of the early Western Zhou. And his descendant was sent to the very much of the northwest to establish a fiefdom in defense of the inner land. And that is a very important part. And that fiefdom later is where Beijing, the capital, is located. And the other inscriptions tells us very important episodes in the early Western Zhou history. So that begs the question, how those 7 vessels come together? And that even begs the question, if we read the original documentation carefully, it said they acquired from Liangshan. The author, Xu Zonggan, if we may go back just for a second. Xu Zonggan, he actually never necessarily specified that they come from same burial. You know, they come from Liangshan together, so we assume, and most of the time we assume they may come from same burial, could be, or they come from same hoard, or maybe come from some, antique peddlers at the foothill of Liangshan. It also is possible. But we don't want to deny any possibility. This is why it is fascinating to continue to study, and the debate is certainly going on. Unfortunately, I think our field is kind of small in the ancient Chinese bronze studies, so this important subject has not been much pursued. But now that we have our bronze rhino, I'm always remain interested. So going forward, I hope that we'll be able to learn more about what happened at that time and whether they constitute the original, what constitute original 7, or whether they were indeed found from the same burial conditions or not. So a lot of detective work is yet to be done. And also, we need to understand the nature of their burial. Their grave goods, they come from tombs, or hoard of precious objects, or deposit for war loots. And I think the later possibilities certainly exist, because you do have a group of vessels that are not homogeneous in their stylistic features, nor in their date. But of course, you could argue that it could be collected, they are collected in ancient times, not collected in the sense that we collect for the aesthetic importance, but for the historic importance, and then somehow they ended up in the hoard or in the burial. So all kinds of possibility exists. And the other questions exist, such as, we know Mr. Brundage bought in 1952 from J.T. Tai. But how J.T. Tai got it? We know that it was first acquired by a descendant of the Confucius family, and we know a certain publication, but we did not have the clear documentation that how J.T. Tai got it. We know for sure J.T. Tai was very active in Shanghai. His primary base of operation was Shanghai, and Shanghai was one of the two dominant markets of antiques besides Beijing. And a lot of art dealers had their headquarters there, such as C.T. Lu as well. C.T. Lu was one generation older than J.T. Tai. And we also know for sure, even after the communists took over China in 1949, when J.T. Tai set up offshore operations in Hong Kong and ultimately in New York, he still maintained his business in Shanghai in the early 1950s. It's around the time of 1951 also, he finally left China. In those first few years, the traffic, the shipment was still relatively fluid. So we can say, more or less, during the time of late 1940s, or at most, the first 2 years of 1950s, that he shipped bronze rhino likely from Shanghai to New York. We know it could not be before 1952 because it's already acquired by Mr. Brundage as well. So in a grand summation, if I may say so, this is a story that connects the Confucius to the Olympians. This is a story that connects the ancient collectors to, of course, even the, the Robin Hood of China. And this is a story that not only begs the question of connoisseurship, epigraphic study, but also scientific research. So I think this is a story that really made up for a great movie. But I'm not a good script writer. So any of you in the audience is interested in helping me out, maybe we can work together to develop a movie script someday. So let me leave my lecture here. There's any number of the content I can go deeper, more detail if you wish. But I hope there will be a lot of questions that are coming from you. Thank you very much.